Welcome to Mystic Brew, and I am Radagast. And tonight I want to talk a little bit about community. I guess it'll be on my scribbling here. Looking at community, what do we share in common? Because community and common have similar roots. But I do want to make an announcement of sorts. I've been in discussion with two of the forums I interact with. One is my main one is the One Truth, but I also participate in iRise. And if you watch any of the Totcasts, and we call them Totcasts because they come from the One Truth, which we call Tot for short. You might have met Aragorn, who's the administrator of the One Truth, and Kathy, who's the administrator of iRise. Of course, Kathy doesn't speak as much as us men. It's not like we don't let her get in there, but she often says, I like listening. So we certainly try to get her in there. So, but I'm working on a series of videos that I'll upload to YouTube, but I think I'm playing with the idea of keeping them unlisted and making them available on a forum, because I'm going to be in what I think needs to be accomplished as I look out and what's going on. I'm looking for a slightly more intimate setting than being out in the wild of YouTube. I might decide against that, and of course, when they're unlisted at any point, if I feel okay, maybe it's time for them to go public, all I have to do is go into my creator studio, hit public, and they're public in moments. Let me see else what I wrote here, but I'm kind of I'm working with the concept of recasting the God spell. And much of what I'm doing this is something I'm thinking about in the weeks to come. That could be 2 weeks. Let me give myself a little neck crack there. And but where's my camera? Seem a little screwy there. Okay, but the power of words. And the inversion, things like I did, like matrix and patrix, although it's even more correctly paratrix, because it's this kind of patrix energy is based on parasitism. But there are so and I might do just a little bite tonight, because I think it's going to play into the concept of community, and also how I'm going to keep my eye on the clock. When I hit a certain point, I'm going to stop, just because I certainly don't want to go over 40 minutes. I'd like to keep it to a half an hour, and I have some food in the oven. And it is 2:30 in the morning, and it is time for me to eat again. But in recasting the God spell, much of the spell is been woven by kind of a hidden priesthood, and that priesthood isn't just in religions. Much of that priesthood are now professors in our colleges. Much of that priesthood are anchors on mainstream newscasts, and it's somebody who kind of shapes the inside of your head, so that when you look at the world, you see something that the people casting a spell want you to see. And so recasting the God spell, because for now I'll just leave it at, because there's almost like a priesthood there, and priesthoods usually intercede between the divine or God and the people who aren't priests. And there is an enormous amount of material to work from there. I'm still conducting much of my studies. I'm currently reading 3 books and have 2 other books to read. All of them, because I'm trying to be as responsible with regards to research and that the books that I read have their own, also have their research, where this isn't just pulling things off of the internet. As a matter of fact, like one of the things I want to get to after I riff a little bit on community is like some of the ideas that we drag into our conversation and stand strongly on. Things like as a musician, for me and somebody who's made the adjustment from 440 to 432 in 2010. And not only did I find that I would go into semi-trance states, I was also much more creative. It's as if like I could now pull music that was just floating all around me that I didn't hear before. But there was something about the solfeggio frequencies. And as a musician, I looked at these and I kind of saw the notes they represented, and I tuned my guitar to those and tried to make music with them. And it was almost like demonic sounding. And then somebody goes, "Oh, they're not meant to be played together." And it's just like, when are notes not supposed to work together? I mean, not every note on a piano works together, but I was trying different combinations, and they just didn't. They had very unwholesome sounds, and that's actually the word I'll be working with tonight is holy. That would be WHOLLY, holy, HOLY, and how holy comes from wholesome, and holy has some interesting origins. And I have all that queued up, and let me tell you, that's a conversation in itself. So maybe I'll just very briefly go through community, because I kind of see that as a little bit of a minefield, but this language thing does tie into it, because to get back to my title here, looking at community, what do we have in common? And I've been partaking in different hangouts. I partook in a Google Hangout last night. Won't mention any names. And I find myself on panels with people who are very typical of our community, where everybody like has their own beliefs. Just it's kind of it's kind of like coming into a music situation, and everybody tunes the way they want to tune. And let me tell you, if everybody came and just tuned any way they felt like tuning and then made music, you wouldn't want to listen to it. And again, because of the cognitive dissonance that's a big part of the spell work, everything gets polarized. It's like, it's either you can think for yourself, or you're put into a box. The idea of coordination, of actual teamwork, where people who are completely individual and often have different talents and different strengths form a team where synergy occurs, because they coordinate, they create a coherence. They, in many ways, in a psychological and in a practical way, they kind of tap into a little bit of a zero energy, which what synergy is, where if you add 3 and 3, logically you get 6, but in certain coordinations, 3 and 3 could give you a greater value. In other words, you get more out than you put in. And just look, synergy. I hope you all know what the word synergy is, and if you don't, please Google it. And hope that the dictionaries, that's the other thing, as I'm starting to use dictionaries, I've used dictionaries all my life. And when I see some of the paucity of information on an online dictionary compared to, I have a dictionary that's still pretty good, a Merriam-Webster dictionary, but it was sometime in the 1800s where Merriam-Webster apparently was kind of almost made to do an editing of his dictionary for more modern understandings of the words. And I forget about it. Maybe one day I'll find the quote, but he almost said I should be executed, or I should be put to death for what I did to the language here. This is Merriam-Webster himself. This is back in the 1800s. I mean, really, even some of the equations from like Maxwell, who was then later edited by this guy named Heaviside. I forget Maxwell's first name. But there, the dumbing down has really kind of started. I mean, the real dumbing down, never mind little bits of suppression, but the actual taking what already existed and starting to strip it really started happening at the very latest by the late 1800s, and really starts in earnest in the beginning of the 1900s. And it also kind of corresponds with the time that the Rockefellers decided that the education system that was kind of based on the little red schoolhouse where everybody went to school until the 8th grade, and unless you were going to specialize in something and go to university, you were done with schooling. They were putting out near geniuses. It was amazing what was being done at that very organic level by very competent teachers. It was so competent, and what was coming out of those schools was so threatening to people like the Rockefellers that they actually kind of made an agreement amongst themselves that we have to chip away. We don't want a nation of thinkers, they said. We want a nation of workers. And since people have been appreciating a certain name I like, and very often these people get called the elite, I'm going to call them the fuckerists because of their fuckery. All right? So no more elite. Elite is a job well done. And again, they might go, well, we are doing our job well, yeah, but for who? And what are you serving? Which also brings us to community. Like, in other words, it seems like all of the people who are fuckerists seem to have a common dark belief system. And they find unity, strength, and coordination in whatever that common belief system is. I mean, obviously you might find some of these people in churches, synagogues, whatever. That's, they have to do that for show. Do I have something on my forehead here? They have to, they very often they're part of the upstanding people in the community. So they better show up at the right places, and then they can go to their special rooms in their basements and do the real work. But so this brings us to, what do we have in common? In many ways, we want to call ourselves a community. And as I partake in these different kind of community panels, I'm seeing a lot of people who want to tune their guitar or their piano their own way, and then still call and like make believe and then we're supposed to fake it like we're actually making music together, all in our own tuning. And so I just see the disunity and dysfunction. And since we have many of the people in this alternative community, many of them have largely left the organized religions, they now practice spirituality. And spirituality is very open-ended. Spirituality is kind of like you tune your instrument the way you want to tune it. And if anybody critiques you, you're engaging in judgment. And that's another one of the New Age memes that came out during my time, was what used to be known as discretion and using judgment to assess something became this shield to hide behind. Like if you call somebody on something, the shield comes up, oh, you're being judgmental. Now, there is such a thing as being judgmental, being stuck in just like a belief system, and then you judge to that belief system, as opposed to assessing a situation. Especially if it's supposed to be coordinated, and if it's dysfunctional, what is dysfunctional? Is it the person who set it up? Is there somebody that's supposedly part of the team that's dysfunctional? I mean, these things are important if you're going to be coordinated enough to stand as something that is unassailable by the minority of the fuckerists. And that is really, because I engage in this conversation, especially in Global Mission of Peace, and fortunately it's calmed down because I've been quite insistent on the cabal's doing this and they're doing this and they're doing that, And it's like, because they can get away with it, because there's no unity. Everybody probably knows that it's better to buy organic, but it's too expensive, they say. But then they eat the crap and end up spending more than, oh, I spend nothing on doctors, but they have doctor bills because eating and good health go together. I'm just wearing a shawl. I don't want to look like I'm naked here. So I'm experiencing it, and I'm biting my tongue, and I'm being as polite as I can, but I am very quietly blown away, and not in a good way, by what I see as disunity, and and the equivalent of hurt. Everybody's heard the expression herding cats. And again, when everybody's out on their own until you call people together to, perform a similar function, and then, it's unique coordination. Football teams have coaches. Something as huge as an orchestra, even though everybody's got music in it, there's somebody to kind of give them their cues. Maybe, a lot of that sometimes, if somebody's playing their part, and you might see somebody go like this, and you go, oh, gee, they probably knew. Well, no, he's out there listening to what the whole thing coming out, and the string section might be a little overpowering. It's not balancing. So we got to give a little of this here, or somebody's getting a little buried. You give them a little, come up here. And then, of course, you make it easy for them and set the time. I mean, these are all things of coordination, so that you get quality at the other end instead of mishmash. And I am really trying to help what we call the community by finding ways that we can coordinate together and not feel like our sovereignty has been violated. Your sovereignty is something you should take for granted. But when you join a crew, it's different. I mean, people in the audience are just kind of basically, asked not to be rude. There's not much coordination there. But when you're on stage, when you actually have a task to perform, coordination is key when you have a multiplicity of participants. So, and then the other problem with this whole cabal and blaming all these things outside us is basically what we've done to identify as a community that makes it seem like we're actually unified is because we stand in opposition to something in common. So we identify ourselves by what we oppose rather than what we're for. And let me tell you, that is a huge part of a formula. It is easy to be a critic. It is easy to look at something and agree that's wrong. And of course, we think we're different because we have family, friends, loved ones, call them what you will, who still call us conspiracy theorists, tinfoil hat wearers. So who are we? We're in many ways the black sheep, and we kind of, the black sheep of the MSM world. And we think that's unity because we stand against a similar thing. But then when we get amongst ourselves, it shows itself for what it is. Let me not put a word on it. It reveals the disunity in the community. So that makes me ask a question: is what do we hold in common? And as even, again, many people are against or opposed to or don't agree with or don't want to participate in organized religions. I don't blame them, but one of their strengths is their organization. Okay? Credit where credit's due. And as I've said, when you kind of like look at either side of a yin-yang symbol, when you look at it, let's say, black is bad, white is good, or let's say white is bad and black is good. Okay, let's just reverse things, just to kind of keep ourselves from polarizing. So once we identify something as bad, that little other color circle in the yin-yang symbol, what that's really kind of a mnemonic or something that's to stimulate a memory. What that is to remind us there is nothing that is absolute. Okay? Like, in other words, no matter how good something is, especially when it represents a group, there's probably a core people who are there for the ride. They're there because of the herd mentality, but they in many ways are not resonant with what looks like the other polarity, but they're not really in resonance with the color side that they picked, whatever color that is. But that's the beauty of part of that beauty is not only recognize that's there, because part of the thing is the proportion, that proportion of antagonism is actually manageable. It isn't deadly to the organism if we're thinking about this as an organism type fashion. And by the way, I've said about isms, when it comes to things, an actual living thing, like an organism, then ism can work. When it comes to systems, that's when you get, especially like to me, in many ways, an ism, in many ways, this is when what's fiction tries to imitate life. And that's the other thing, is much of the systems are all mimicry. They're mimicking the natural world in some way or another. And the Gnostics have a bit to say about mimics, but that's not for tonight's conversation. In fact, that's the kind of stuff I might want to do in a more intimate setting with people who are really interested in taking this to another level and really getting ourselves free of the spell. Do I have anything else? So we have opposition instead of standing for something. I mean, that's when I see the weakness of this, I'm going to call it right now a so-called alternative community, because the word community is weak. Again, we stand in opposition to something in common, but once we come to what we stand for, it's the Three Stooges to the infinite, to the nth degree, in too many cases. Again, I can't say all, because even if I say, oh my God, what a mess, there's actually that little bit that isn't a mess. So, I'm telling you that it really can ground you. Just when you think, oh, I see it, but you got to remember that, and that piece, that kind of balances things out. Because like when things are good, it balances out to realize, there might be something to manage. When things are bad, it reminds you that, well, there's, it's not completely bad. It just needs some fixing. And the part that isn't, that, the where in the disunity there in fact is some unity, perhaps if we just sing a little louder or make a little more sense, we can get, other people to say, okay, you're singing louder, I guess I better tune up to you, because, and that's what sympathy is about. It's matching vibration. That's what sympathy is. And, and then again, it's kind of beautiful that people are teaching themselves. But like, let me see, I got a whole bunch of stuff here. I have multiple windows open for tonight. I guess oh boy, that's the one thing I didn't queue up. But it was a beautiful saying about reading things. Maybe, I guess it's worth my while to try and find it. And how, because a big, whether you're reading or whether you're taking your information through reading, or taking in your information through, videos, it's still kind of, you're taking in data, and then what you do with that data is important. And I found this really good saying, and it's by Sir Francis Bacon, who might have been the ghostwriter for Shakespeare. And here it is. Read not to contradict and confute, nor to believe and take for granted, nor to find talk and discourse, but to weigh and consider. Okay, I'll say that one more time. Read, or take in your information, not to contradict and confute, nor to believe and take for granted, nor to find talk and discourse, but to weigh and consider. And one of the things that actually I can bring it up on my oh, it's not really centered. Oh, there it is. Come on. I'm sitting here resizing my browser. Where's the rest of it? There we go. Won't work. I'll put it there a little bit. That's what it looks like on my thread. Rose Goble tent at Tot. But there's somebody at that same forum who apparently they started a thread. They wanted to have a discussion, and what did they do? They put a whole bunch of books to read. I don't think they've written one paragraph of their own words they want to have a discussion, but basically they give us a reading list. There's not a full paragraph, like a couple of sentence paragraph from them to engage in conversation. That's why this quote is important. Too much of what has happened today, especially with the web, is somebody wants to make a statement, they go out and they find a video that makes the statement for them, as opposed to maybe putting out a few paragraphs of it and go, and if you would like some more on what I've already given you, you might want to listen here. This kind of inspired me to write what I wrote. Not I've kind of lifted the words. No, I've listened, I've considered it. Now I have taken in data, I've coordinated it with where I'm coming from and all the other streams of data that it needs to connect to, because sitting alone is ridiculous. Because you can't really put together a coherent story with, an hour video. But it is this kind of intellectual laziness or just bad habits where we think that we can have conversations with other people doing the talking for us. And this is what do you think? We're all taking in all this information, but you need to sit down and coordinate it and own it. And again, you can have a dynamic sense of what you own. We change day by day. I've changed over the years. And much of it more nuanced than in these great leaps and bounds, because I'm building. So as I'm building, if I'm adding different bricks and occasionally taking some bricks out, but the net result will be more. Trees grow, they lose branches, but they still get bigger. So that's and that's a very organic process. That's how nature works. We come from nature. Nature is a teacher. Yeah, so breaking the spell. So an interesting word. Okay, now while I'm sitting here, let me cue up that word. And we're holy. Okay. Now, talk about kind of spell work, all right? We have words like holy, H-O-L-Y. And we have words similar to that like holistic with an H. I have spelled holistic with a W since I started spelling holistic. Matter of fact, I think if somebody goes, "You're spelling holistic wrong," I go, "No, you guys have it wrong," because it's clear in English. If this is an English word, the word whole is a whole. And so when you have a hole in something and it's not holistic, you're having something that's more like a religion or a dogma. So like in certain holistic things, taking an aspirin might be, Oh, but that's not holistic. Well, you know something? If it's what the person, if the person's in pain, and and they won't take. Maybe you have some things, but oh no, that tastes bad or whatever. Any number of things. Oh, let me go turn off my oven. So, with things like holy, so what if you're in a position, whether you're a mom taking care of a kid or you call yourself a healer, and that's an interesting topic in itself. The most important thing is if somebody's reporting pain, then what you want to do is get rid of the pain. Holism very often says, well, it has to be either Reiki or massage or this or that. Holism with a W is, what do we have? What fills the needs of the person I'm trying to assist to get out of their pain? And, because again, it's anything of what's available, and also what will the person who needs the assistance actually do. There are people who are constipated. You might go, oh, you want to try an enema? Oh, I ain't doing that. Okay, so maybe you need to give them Senna tea, which isn't the healthiest thing. But again, if or they go, oh, I don't know if I want to take that stuff, then give them an X-Lax or whatever. You know what I mean? That's what real holism with the W is. Let's get the job done. Let's get the person better. That's holistic. Holistic with an H is there's a right way and a wrong way. And it isn't, it's more about the system, okay? Not the ecosystem, a system, instead of getting the job done, which is one human being caring for another human being. The real things, not systems. Human beings that come from nature, the ecosystem. Making some points here. So, the word holy. I'm going to put it up. I don't know if you're going to be able to see it as well. Maybe I can expand that a little bit, but I don't know. I can at least take my browser top out of there. But when I look up the word holy and try and get it, the funny thing is, I'll just read it. It shows you the spin on things. How sometimes the quote unquote fuckery is done through by switching things out. Okay, so the word holy, from Old English heilig, meaning wholeness with a W. That's what this says here. The word holy, coming from the Old English, looks like it says heilig, means wholeness. So right away we see this the fuckery at work. All right. It actually comes from wholeness. So why do they drop the W? Well, I got something for that too. Denotes the presence of sacredness in an object, being, person, place, or idea. Now, that actually holy is usually applied to a person. Sacred is applied to objects. All right, that's kind of the nuance between holy and sacred. Holiness or a state of holy is often ascribed to saints, gurus, blah, blah, blah. Okay, etymology. All right, so we find out that holy actually comes from a word meaning wholeness, but they dropped the W, and I will get to why they probably dropped the W. The origin of the word holy comes from the 11th century High German hulis and Old English hollen, meaning holly, as in the holly tree. So right now, here we are, we're in pagan land, all right, because the holly was something that was special to the earth people, to the people who venerated and revered the earth. They didn't worship the earth. Worship is part of holiness. Okay, wholesome people revered and respected what gave to them. Okay, so as a holly tree, considered a sacred plant to both pre-Christian, Celtic, and Roman, and here they say worship. And this is the other thing. They always, oh, you got to be against those earth worshipers. Nobody was worshiping the earth. Worship is fuckery. They're sticking their words on other people because it's a way of screwing with the mind, and also it takes away from what to the old people was a very sacred and wholesome thing to do, was to be quite appreciative for the planet that we were put on, how this planet would just give to us, and the sweet, there was a real love for the planet. The word hulis originates from an even older Proto-Germanic word, huli, a shortened derivation of the ancient Gaelic, looks like quilian, both meaning holly. So the distinction of the word holy appeared around the 13th century with the Old English word holig, derived from hal, meaning health, happiness, and wholeness with a W. All right, so I'm going to stop right there, because if I haven't made enough of a point about just how many twists and turns to get this word that, in modern organized religions, holy, and very much a part of the systems, the control systems, the control systems of the fuckerists, that, again, if we're going to get even close to the word without a W, we have to go to an old pagan sacred plant. Okay, a plant that was held in reverence by the very people they would later either convert or exterminate. So right away we start to see, okay, this whole hypocrisy and obfuscation and fuckery is starting to show itself in grand scale. I might, because of the subject matter, a word that I usually try to use once a show might get used a few more times than I want to use it. Now, let me before I get in, let me get in. There's a guy had a really good here we go. There was a guy, again, at the One Truth Forum, and he did this beautiful thread on root languages. All right, so if holy originally came from wholesome, why would they strip away the W? Okay, now if you one of the this little background, one of the great sins of the pagan people was they worship what they called worshipped. They revered and honored the earth goddess. In other words, for them, God was a woman, even though she derived from an ultimate creator, which, because of its activity, would have fallen into something they might call a pro-pater. Pater is father. But this was the great mystery. Okay, this was the originator, and the originator produced these pairings and occasionally singularities. In the Gnostic mythos, where Sophia or Sophia, I say Sophia, so it's different from the name Sophia. And the word Sophia actually means wisdom in Greek. I think we all know that by now, hopefully. She appeared she might have been paired initially with part of a syzygy, or that those, a syzygy is how these pairs come out. It's actually a cosmic or an older term having to do with creation, and a creation from that one initial something that was nothing. In the Greek, the Hebrew word is ayin, Awyin, and but all right. So what do? We have that the word holy in some ways comes from a word that means wholesome. Let me put this up here. W is for wise woman. And it goes on, the virgin, the mother, the crone, and basically, again, woman is with a W, womb is with a W, wisdom is with a W. So the W, to take the word W off of a word like holy, was to remove the divine feminine from the word, which would fit very much with the people who were basically exterminating the original, what the people practiced for tens of thousands of years on the planet. They now were coming with a quite unforgiving male deity, and who really didn't seem to have it to like women very much. Again, even in their own setup, the whole reason why we're sinned and thrown out of the garden is because the woman ate the apple and Pandora opened the box that Zeus gave her. The setups, the mythologies. Whether they're, and that's the other thing. Part of what the Patrix has done is the mythologies were the original sacred texts of the old ways, and even in Greek, mythos is a way of putting in a story way deeper understanding, truths, and wisdom in a way that can be apprehended when you start getting the symbolism. These days, you might say, "Oh, that's just a myth," which is to disregard it. It's a myth. In many ways, means false in common language. Myth didn't mean false. Myth was the narrative that carried a story that held deeper wisdom. So, from a lot of people's perspective, when we look at what is held sacred, let's say by the Abrahamic faiths, that's their mythos. That's their mythology. But of course, they're the ones kind of in control of the gendarmes, so they don't really. This is sacred holy text. Holy text. This is the Holy Bible with an H. But we won't get lost there. So anyway, but to me, again, when you start understanding spell work, and it's so much spell work going on, and when you look at, you see that holy can either come from holly, which was sacred to the old religions, or comes from also, in every case, it either came from holly or wholesome, but stripping away the W. Why? Because that stands for wise woman. Or womb, or woman itself. Everything around W. Even, you can, I won't get into more graphic representations of what can be seen there. And then again, even if we take the word holy sounds like whole. Even when we come to the womb, the exit where the children emerge from could colloquially or vulgarly be called a hole. So the women, the divine feminine is all over everything, because the divine feminine is what we emerge from. I'm talking locally, not cosmically. We live locally. We live on a very, very beautiful, sacred planet. And, okay, maybe I want to, actually, something? I'm at 42 minutes. I think I might have a talk here. I won't even get to the various, I think it's a separate one. I have queued up ice crystals. I don't know if you know of Masuro Emoto's work with taking crystals and then taking pictures of it. Like if you say like the word love and put it on there, you get one crystal. If you put I hate you, you get this terrible thing. If you put devil, you get this. But there are some, and I found a place that has a list of different words and the crystals they produce. And wisdom actually makes a very nice crystal. Love makes nice crystals. But there's some really interesting ones. And actually, I remember I mentioned the solfeggio frequency. And maybe I'll close with that. Okay, so amongst the solfeggio frequencies, apparently the one that kind of is the best, all right, is 528. This is the supreme healing frequency, apparently, of solfeggio frequencies. Like I said, now I've played with them as a musician, and they don't play well with each other. It's like, having a bunch of notes that want to fight with each other rather than actually work with each other. So, and the other, okay, here's, to me, I want to show you some healthy crystals, and I can do that very quickly. Let's see. Okay, let's do a quick look at some healthy crystals, all right? Is that positioned well enough? Here, I guess I can move this a little bit and then bring it back for you. All right. So over here you can see compassion, pretty nice crystal. And notice the whole thing you're looking for is it has these are like, snowflakes. They're basically hexagonal, or they have 6 projections. And they can have all kinds of thank you. Look at it, it's very ornate. It's got 6, but it gets actually kind of, gets busy with itself. Wisdom, very similar. Instead of just the points, which compassion has, basically it's almost like little Christmas trees there. Wisdom, not only does it have the 6 points, and then it has, a little more action coming off the end. In the center is really a very kind of symmetrical hexagon. One of the things, to me, what we're looking for again is 6 crystal, 6 points, and the symmetry, or even the aesthetic of what the crystal looks like. Here we at this bottom here, this is water before, after. This is before and after. So this is the ugly crystal of like nasty water before a Buddhist prayer, and this is the same water after a Buddhist prayer and the crystal it makes. And as you can see, 6 points, nice symmetry. It's kind of nice. Here's the absolute mush of heavy metal music. Here is this ugly whatever it is from putting "I will kill you." This one is from "You fool." And then over here we have some other crystals. We see over here is "Thank you," which will actually bear some resemblance to wisdom. There's another wisdom crystal. This one has better symmetry. Again, who knows who wrote it. This is truth. Truth is nice. Eternal has beautiful. As you can see, now they have the 6 points, but it has, a very nice, hexagon on the outside. What I think is particularly interesting is you see this kind of hot mess over here. Okay, it's it's the second on the left down. The word written there, surprise, surprise, is angel. Isn't that kind of interesting? So you see, thank you, wisdom, and we get to angel, and we get, what is that? First of all, look at that inner symmetry. I mean, really. And then the outer, what symmetry? It's really, I think that's kind of interesting, and that's another conversation, and maybe for the, what I'll call private stock. I love you. This has nice symmetry. Peace. You fool doesn't have any symmetry at all. Evil is just like a black hole. Isn't that interesting? Let me go into the page itself. You make me sick. There's this one here. Evil, polluted water, the same polluted water after prayer. Not the greatest symmetry, but huge improvement. If I scroll down a little bit more, truth, wisdom, thank you, compassion, joy, love, eternal. Okay, so we see these. To me, the 2 things that are interesting, and I hope you can see them, here's that angel one again. That doesn't look even like the crystal. The other very interesting one is this word here is soul. Wow. What's going on there? So this is some of that stuff. Now, what I want to show you, okay, now that you see what a nice crystal looks like, okay? The nice crystals have 6 points. They have nice symmetry to them. Here, I have all the solfeggio crystals, but here is 528, the one that has the great healing frequency. Will you look at this thing? Not only it has 7 points instead of 6. There's no balance to the points. Look, this one is stunted. This one is like got like a 2-headed monster. Then you have these. Look at the inner symmetry. Looks like a broken yoke. All right. If we move over to this another solfeggio frequency, okay, we have some fairly decent outer symmetry. But if you recall the beauty of some of those other crystals, like for wisdom and love, compassion, this isn't particularly elegant. The center of it is not well formed. There's like 6 main frequencies here. Some of them are better than others, but I'm focusing on the 528 because it basically has 7 points instead of 6. The symmetry is all off, and this is supposedly the most powerful healing frequency of the solfeggio frequency. Here's the rest of them. I mean, look at the inner symmetry here. Look at the outer symmetry. Not particularly good. A little improvement here. This is probably the best of the bunch. But look at in the middle. It's, you know, it looks like I don't know. I'm not impressed. But like I said, the 528. Never mind. Am I not impressed? I'm horrified because of what the claims are for that frequency. All right, I'm going to come back. I could go on and on. Matter of fact, there are a lot of words, and what's interesting is that 528 frequency demonstrates, 7 points. There were 2 other crystals that with words that also produced what we'll call a hepta thing instead of a hexa, 7 points. Those 2 words, very interestingly, were Amen and Jehovah. But that's on a big list, and I have to kind of scroll through them. And again, I'm at 50 minutes. It's time to call it a mystic brew. Tell you all that I love you. Stay sane. Start finding out what we're for as a community. What do we stand for instead of in common, instead of what we stand against? The word elite actually means the best of the best. Okay, it isn't about lording over anybody. It's not about being a controller. It's about high quality. And so why don't we start showing those who have called themselves, I don't know if they've called themselves elite, maybe, at some point they do, but I mean, it's kind of, oh yeah, those elite. Pfft, please. Those are the fuckerists. All right. And we can be the elite. We're billions of people. So, but we're going to have to up our game, or else you can't call yourself elite. You actually have to perform at an elite level. And we can do that, but we'd have to think that it matters. We have to think that that's actually going to empower us, and trust me, it will. So I love you, stay sane, and I'll see you next time.